Confessions, Augustine's autobiography. This was written 1600 years ago, and what he's written about musical worship is so contemporary, you're not going to believe it. Let's get into it. Not nearly enough Christians have read this book. If you know anything about it, maybe you know the opening lines where Augustine is talking to God and he says, "You have made us for yourself, and our heart is restless until it rests in you." If you have read it, maybe you got up to the bit where Augustine is in a garden weeping, and he opens his Bible, reads one sentence, and is converted in an instant. What you might not know is Augustine has been writing about his life story up until this point, but his confessions don't finish there. One of the many things he goes on to write about is musical worship, and he only gives it a page and a half, but what he writes is fascinating. I think Augustine gives a healthy balance of pros and cons. On the one hand, he says, "I recognise the great utility of music in worship." And on the other hand, he says music is an immense jungle of traps and dangers. And Augustine's like a pendulum swinging between the two as he writes. We're going to pick our way through the jungle of the two extremes that Augustine presents. First we'll look at the benefits, and then we'll look at the dangers. And then finally we'll see if Augustine gives us any advice about how to avoid those dangers. So the benefits of music in worship. What does Augustine say? Well, his basic point is music moves us. He says things like our souls are moved and they're kindled to piety when we sing. More so than if we were just speaking. Singing actually moves us. But Augustine is talking about much more than just an emotional trip here. Now, it's much more than that. For Augustine, actually the lyrics are really important to him. He says he loves music in worship when they're combined with the thoughts which give them life. Whose soul is in your words, God. And that can make him say he's moved not by the chant or the music, but by the words. So Augustine loves this kind of music in worship. Music which moves him and is combined with God's word. And it's about this kind of music that he says, "I recognise the great utility of music in worship." So Augustine says that, but he also recognises the dangers. Augustine recognises the opposing danger, where he says the music moves him more than the subject of the song. The pendulum swings in completely the opposite direction. And Augustine even says he's tempted to completely ban the music in church. I guess we can say at least Augustine was aware of the dangers. At one point he says music has a tenacious hold on him. Are we aware of the dangers as well? Are we aware when the music might be moving us more than the subject of the song itself? So Augustine's laid out the benefits and the dangers of music in worship. But does Augustine give us any advice about how to avoid the dangers and reap the benefits? Augustine at one point says he's tempted to take excessive safeguards to avoid being led astray. And we can be the same as well, can't we? In an attempt to avoid one danger, we can swing so far that we fall off the cliff in the other direction. Augustine gives us another warning as well. He says his physical delight overcomes his reason. It's worth thinking about. How do we enable our reason to keep going when we're singing, not just our physical delight? One final bit of advice that Augustine gives us is about singing. He says that it should be done with a clear voice and modulation. And he takes his lead from Athanasius, who says that the singing should almost have the same kind of rhythm as speaking. I guess the principle for us is our music shouldn't distract from the words that we're singing. It shouldn't be too shabby, nor should it be too showy. So that's some of what Augustine says about musical worship at the end of his Confessions. I encourage you to give it a read yourself, you won't regret it.